I have a thing with the fire department. Every time there's something going on in the neighborhood where they need an ambulance, they send a fire truck. Why?
That's been battled over a lot lately. What's the ambulance service? ARM?
It's required.
It's required,
I mean,
but it's not required in other communities. They do it different. So there's two different ways they can do it. In our community, they send out a big truck every time. They might send out multiple trucks. And they think that they need to do that because of X. They would say that it's a safety issue and they want those trucks out in case there's another call. That truck then can go to another call. I tend to disagree with them, and there's a big battle about how, like Seattle as an example, when it's not a fire, when it's a medical issue, the first thing Seattle does is they send out an ambulance. They don't send out fire trucks. They send an ambulance out. Now, Susanna might be able to talk about statistics a little bit, but the statistics that I've been told is that the survival rate, or we are essentially, you're 3 times more likely to die in Spokane rate-wise because of the length of time and them calling ambulance late. And Seattle has a more efficient, cheaper system, and their survival rate is like 3 times better, is what I've heard. Do you have anything to add to all that?
Well, part of the problem is with the fire trucks, they don't all have paramedics, okay? And so they might not always be at the station. They might have EMTs who don't have the same skill set as a paramedic. For example, they can't intubate, put a tube down somebody's throat. So when the dispatcher goes out, they don't know who's going to be closest to this medical emergency. And so, I mean, what they need to do, maybe in Seattle they have a communication way where
we have a communication
they can
here
communicate
as well.
this, that they can get an ambulance there before the fire trucks, because that's really what needs to get there is an ambulance. And so a lot of times what happens in Spokane, both of them show up because it's an emergency and they're dispatching both of them.
And we have 2 separate.
The ambulance has an EMT and a paramedic.
And we have 2 separate dispatch systems. I got a big earful of this from a guy named Bill Johnson that's been fighting with and sued and been countersued by the city over the last 20 years about ARM or AMR, whatever they are. And in fact, the medical service, the ambulance service, has been found guilty of fraud multiple times in the past and is currently going through some situations where they've been found. And essentially everyone's treating it like they have their own entity and they don't have competition. And so they get to charge as much as they want and do whatever they want, whereas some communities have multiple ambulance service and that tends to keep the cost down.
It just seems like we're paying double payments.
We are in fact paying way more. We are in fact paying more.
We want a fireman if I'm having a heart attack.
No, and
for worse service. We're paying more for worse service.
It's even worse like in an accident. I was on Highway 2 weeks ago. I'm not kidding. There was like 3 ambulances, a fire truck, at least 6 cop cars. I mean, they were all rushing to the scene. And it was a pretty bad accident, sure, but I'm like, do we really need 6 cop cars coming to this? You know,
Who's going to arrest?
It was.
But here's the cynic
Oh,
in me.
yeah, it's horrible.
Here's the cynic is that it has already been found through the ambulance service, and people would suggest about our fire department, is they do this so they can buy newer rigs more often because they wear them out faster and they can spend their money and keep their budgets high. And so in fact, when you compare the service quality level for the amount of money spent here versus other places like Seattle, there are other ways to do it better. But when you fight those battles in City Hall, those departments will fight back. And a lot of you have fought other battles with City Hall and they will fight you tooth and nail. So I just will suggest that again, using the internet and using like community groups, we're going to look and see, do some statistical analysis of what other communities are doing things well or better or cheaper, and I can guarantee you we can deliver better services in a cheaper way. So.
If you call 911 and ask for an ambulance, will they send a fire truck?
Oh, they'll send a fire truck. You don't have a choice. No, a fire truck always goes out
I
first.
should think if you ask for an ambulance, you should get an ambulance.
Well,
you get an emergency response.
Yeah, you'll get a fire truck. You'll never get an ambulance.
They don't know who's going to get there first.
You always get an ambulance second.
The ambulance is a block and a half from my house. I can walk over there fast.
Yeah.
When my sister had a heart attack, I put her in my car and took her to the hospital.
Let me reaffirm that we have a ton of goodies too, and feel free to get up as I'm talking and all of that, and eat some more goodies. So anyway,
Is there another
we're gonna move on.
Yeah.
All right, so we're gonna move on. Anyway, that is something that definitely needs to be looked at. Who's next?